I'm Suzanne O'Brien. I'm the Vice President of Crisis Systems Integration and Technical Assistance with our consulting team at RI, and I'm really excited to be here this morning moderating our panel discussion on women in leadership. Yesterday, we heard David give an incredible, he told our origin story, and it included the discussion of three pivotal women in really shaping the face of what we do here at Recovery Innovations, Marianne Long, Ann Ryder, and Lisa St. George. And together, those women were really pivotal in changing the face of RI and becoming a company that is inclusive of people with lived experience and putting an emphasis on recovery-oriented culture and service delivery. And this really also put us on the map, both nationally and internationally. But at the core, it is who we are today. And so those three women we had the story of how they shaped who we are today. And this morning, I'm really thrilled that we have five women joining us on our panel who continue to support the mission of Recovery Innovations from their respective leadership roles across the country. So I am going to introduce them one by one, starting with Charlotte Claiborne. I hope she's on this morning. I think I saw your name. Charlotte is the Executive Director of the Bridge Center for Hope in Louisiana. Helen Jones-Kelley is the Executive Director of the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board for Montgomery County, Ohio. Good morning. Erika Clark Jones is the CEO of the Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Board in Franklin County, Ohio. Jamie Michael, the Health and Human Services Director for Doña Ana County in New Mexico. And last but certainly not least, Representative Tina Orwall from the state of Washington. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Women in Leadership panel. I'm just thrilled that to have you all here. These women have come from very diverse backgrounds, and they're going to share some of their personal experiences today about how the experiences in their life that really shaped their careers and how they got to the roles they got to today. And hopefully all of you will have some key takeaways as to what is important as we look to include more women in leadership roles and focus on that inclusion across our agency. So I'm going to jump right in. We have a number of questions we want to get to, and I'd love to hear from more than one person, so we have a diverse set of answers. Our first question, I'm going to ask Charlotte to kick us off this morning. Our first question, can you share a pivotal moment or experience in your career that significantly influenced your journey as a female leader?
Hi, good morning, everyone. When I was thinking about this question, it took me on a few journeys, but it's not with the role that I'm currently in, but it was with the previous role that I had when I worked at a company for 17 years. And what I've learned is it is okay to say no. You don't have to jump at every opportunity that comes to you, because what some people feel is a great opportunity, you know deep down that it is not. What I wanted to say is I was working at Entergy for 17 years, and my manager, who thought he was providing me with this huge opportunity to do a lateral position for another department. But what he failed to realize is that department was going to close, and that was not the journey or my path that I was trying to take. And so when I turned down the position, I knew for me, I wasn't compromising my beliefs. I knew that I wasn't compromising what I sought for myself. And so what I'm saying, I'm wrapping all it up to say that you don't have to take everything that's offered to you. Sometimes it's best to say no and wait and look around and understand what it is that you want to go and what you want to do for your life, and then follow that. And as a result of that, I mean, I am where I am and I love what I do. And so I think had I not said no, I would not be probably in this position.
That's great advice. Thank you for that story. I'd love to hear from, how about Jamie?
Good morning. Thank you, Sue Ann.
Good morning.
So when I think about a pivotal moment in my career, it was really the time that I went from being a manager of a division to the department director and making that transition. And I was lucky enough to participate in a regional leadership training for healthcare and public health professionals in our region. And one of the first activities we did was something similar to a 360 performance review. And when I looked at that survey tool and the questions that were on it, I really had this aha moment where I went from my role and the way I measure my performance and my contribution isn't how much I know and how much I do, but the questions were really related to how do the people in my team feel supported by me, and how am I supporting and growing other leaders and building the staff's capacity to learn and do on their own. So that was really a pivotal moment. And I think maybe women have more of a tendency to feel like they have to do and they have to know the most and do the most, versus taking a different seat at the table and being there to support the people around me. So that was a pivotal moment. And also, just briefly, I think an experience in my career that's really been significant is very much related to the work that RI promotes around peer support and peer-led work. So connecting with my peers, with other women who were working in leadership roles was really important. And that's when one of the most supportive things for me was connecting with other women who were also mothers and trying to balance the workplace and the home and the guilt that you feel when you are at work and you may not do everything that you want to do for your family, but knowing that I wasn't the only one feeling that way, and talking to other women who were going through the same kind of challenge with their work-life balance was really an important experience for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jamie. Representative Orwall, I would love to hear from you on this one as well.
Thank you. Good morning from Washington State. Thank you for the invite. It's an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of RI, and I know it's really difficult work. So I want to thank everyone for what you're doing. It's so important. And I do have to do a shout out to Tammy, who is an RI rock star from Washington State, if she's here today. You know, when I was thinking about my career, you know, I just remember some of the challenges in my 20s, and I was working on an involuntary psychiatric unit and trying to find my grounding, right? And a lot of the supervisors were men. And at the time, and hopefully this doesn't happen as much, is I really didn't feel recognized for my skills. There was a lot of comments about what clothes the women wore and different jokes. And it was pretty uncomfortable. And there was a woman there who ran the discharge office. And she reached out to me, and I ended up working for her. And it was really just a key moment in my career. And my lesson learned is we have to support each other as women. You know, sometimes the workplaces are very difficult, and I don't always see that. Hopefully that's changing. But again, I think we have to be just our supports to each other, because it can be very difficult.
Absolutely. Wise words. Helen or Erika, anything you would add or jump in, anything that comes to mind on a pivotal moment?
I would add one thing, and that is the fact that we have to learn how to lean on others. You know, we talk about supporting each other, but, you know, women don't do a very good job of that. And I think that we have to be honest with ourselves and with others about asking for help and being willing to take feedback. And that was a pivotal moment for me when I realized that I did not have all the answers. And, you know, you hear people use that terminology around feeling like they're a fraud in the space, you know, wondering, you know, how did I get here and what do I do now? Realizing there are people that will be supportive, but we have to give each other those signals so that we know that we can lean in on each other and depend upon each other, because we just don't have a great tradition of doing that. And we should not be in competition with one another. There's room for all of us in the leadership.
That's really fantastic. Great words, Helen. We do have to support each other, and there's not enough of it. And that's a great segue into our next question is, given some of the challenges that you all have pointed to, how have you navigated or overcome those in the workplace? Let's hear from Jamie again.
So when I think about the challenges that I face, I think kind of ongoing, I work in local government. So we have a board of elected officials that govern us, and local government is very diverse. So although in public health and healthcare, there are a lot of women in the work field, as I advanced in my career, I became kind of the minority. So there were definitely more men that I work with now versus women. And for me, the biggest challenge is being heard. I feel like I'm saying a message and I'm giving information, and it's not as easy for me to be heard as it is for a male counterpart to be heard. And there's some really examples, especially during county commission meetings, where I would say one thing and a male counterpart would say the exact same thing, and they would hear it from him and not from me. And those moments are like, what just happened? So I've tried to figure out, how do I overcome that challenge? Obviously, we have to be really prepared. We have to know our stuff. We have to be able to communicate and speak publicly very well. But I've also found out that one-on-one communication with people can be more productive than in a public setting or in a large group. So I've had to be very intentional about, prior to meetings or different events, making sure that if I want to communicate a message, that I meet with people individually, and that seems to be a better way to be heard. So that's what I feel still goes on, and we all have to figure out how to communicate and be heard.
Great tip. Show up early, one-on-ones. Get your message across. Any other thoughts about how you've navigated some of those challenges? Feel free to jump in. Erika?
Yeah. First of all, that experience really resonates with me. And I also just congratulate RI for having this venue, making this a priority, empowering the team that you have, because it's really important. And I think your women leaders just being seen, recognized, and having the space to verbalize what's happening in their own space, and then get enough information to feel empowered, be empowered, and execute is huge. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is about, executing on behalf of the people we serve. To Jamie's point, I can tell you, navigating those challenges, I've done it the wrong way, and I've learned to get better at it. I don't even know if I'm doing it the right way. I just know I've gotten better. I recall at one point in my career, early, also in local government, where I was on a senior staff team for a year that they called the locker room. Now, for our younger team members on this call, there was a time that women were not in the locker room on your sports broadcast. That is not the case anymore, so that's progress. But back in the day, there were no women in the locker rooms, and it was a big deal if there were. And the leadership team that I sat on for the 15th largest city in America was called the locker room, and I was the only female in there. And that in itself was intimidating, but I had several other women outside our department say, what's it like being in the locker room? How do you show up in the locker room? How do you survive in the locker room? How are you the one not responsible for coffee orders in the locker room? And so much like what Charlotte said, there were some lines I wouldn't cross. You want coffee? I heard it's upstairs and I heard it's good, right? Was my response to that. And for a while, I just listened and tried to navigate landmines in the room. But then I had to employ strategies that basically sent a message about my personal brand, that I was reliable, that I was trustworthy, that whatever opinion I brought to the table represented true experience that was happening on the ground or in the community, so that when I brought my information back or my contributions to the solutions were vetted and seemed to be things that solved real problems, right? They were responding to real information. And so that's how I built my brand that ultimately became very valuable for the stakeholders.
Wow.
You can
When you
jump in
first said
with another
locker room,
strategy.
I was terrified. Helen?
I just wanted to add, I think this topic gets a lot of us really excited, right? So having been in those rooms where I've offered an idea and then the man on the other side of me offers that same idea, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, that's a great idea, Frank. So I typically do insert myself and thank Frank for illuminating what I was saying. And then one of the things I forgot to say was, and that I add more, because I just can't let that moment pass anymore. For so many years, younger in my career, I would, and I'd sit and fume. Now I just own it. And I think that's one of the things that I would love to impart, especially to people who are young in their career. Own your voice, because it's just one of those things that will create more problems for you. Fuming in the other room later, no, come back around it and take back your power.
Fantastic, Helen.
Can I add one thing to both of those comments? When I found that I worked around a bunch of men very early in my career, and I will come home and I will be frustrated after meetings, and I will explain some of those things to my husband. And what I've learned to do is to speak men. That is a totally different language. And so my husband will say, well, if you would have said X, Y, and Z, they probably would have understood. So it was through those conversations with my husband that I would go, and when I would be in those meetings, and I was the only female or one of very few, I would use examples and I would speak to them in a way that they could understand, or I would give examples that a man would use. And then it was like, oh, I'm like, that's what it was. Okay, got it. So it's a totally different language. It's a way for you, it's another mechanism for you to be heard. And then you can kind of do what Helen's saying, and to so-and-so's point, but I just learned very early on how to speak men, because the way my brain think is not the same way that their brain think. And so I had to draw on experiences that, okay, well, if I say it this way, or if I give this particular example, then they will catch it. And I found that to work very early, and it helped open the lines of communication. Then they were starting to seek my opinion on certain topics and subjects, or how I would go about it. And then I can speak the way that I want after I've explained to them in their terminology, I guess you can say.
Yeah, definitely. So this idea of just like owning your voice, as Helen said, Erika said, build your brand, but be yourself. I mean, you're bringing your own unique self and experiences to the table. Don't hide by running upstairs and getting the coffee. Step forward, take a seat at the table. Maybe some of you in our audience have read Lean In, the pivotal work that's 12 years old now by Sheryl Sandberg, about taking a seat at the table. And if you don't have a seat, bring your own, and pull in, lean in. Thank you for that. That was very inspirational. My next question is, I'd love to hear from Erika again on this one. In what ways does having diverse leadership in an organization, specifically women, contribute to organizational success and innovation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I'm sure everyone on this call has experienced in one form or another. But I think when an organization embraces leadership from a female or a woman, a person of color, a person diverse in age, diverse in gender and preference, all of those things signal that every contribution from diverse voices not only is heard, it's recognized, it's valued, and then acted upon, right? The best, I've been on lots of different teams trying to solve tough challenges in different communities. And you can't solve for a real problem without the perspectives of all those you represent. And when you've got so many different diverse perspectives coming to the table, first of all, we learn better as a group, and then we can solve for the tough challenge. My one example on this is when I worked to reduce the infant mortality rate in Franklin County in Ohio. One of the things we learned, and we learned this from diverse women, and diverse, so all backgrounds, all races, but coming from challenged communities, they applauded what we were trying to do, but they said, until you bring someone that has walked in my shoes that I can trust, I don't know how much I'm going to believe in the strategies that you either want me to participate in or implement. And so we said, then what does it take to build trust? Show us. And we learned from them. And then we used that in other communities that weren't as disenfranchised. And we learned everyone benefited as a result. And so I think not only does it signal to folks that their contribution is valued, it also helps us problem solve better together and drive innovation.
Absolutely. Thank you. Charlotte, would love to hear from you on this one.
So for me, not only was I oftentimes the only woman in the room, I was often the only Black woman in the room. And it was through those experiences early on in my career that I realized I spoke for a collective and represented more than just myself. And it was also through those experiences where I was allowed to educate people on cultural competencies, because they would make decisions that, you know, that we had biases that we were not aware of. And one of the examples that I can, is so simple, but it was funny because we had a lady who joined our team, and she would come in, or she was our manager in fact, and she would come in and she would enter a room full of people and she would just start talking and saying, I need you to do X, Y, and Z. And when she would leave, we would all look at each other and say, well, did she speak? And that went on for a couple of weeks. And then one day I just got up and I said, okay. And I went to her office and I knocked on her door and I said, hey, I said, can I speak to you for a moment? And she said, sure. And I explained, I said, you know, I'm just going to give you something because I'm not sure you're aware. And this is, I mean, I'm from the South, from Louisiana. So I said, when we were growing up, we were raised that once you enter into a room and there are people that are already established there, we speak, we say good morning, and then we go on about what it is that we need to do. I said, we find it rude and dismissive when you don't do that. And she looked at me and said, oh my God, I had no idea that I was doing that. And I said, well, no, it's just a simple good morning. And then you talk, you acknowledge our presence. And she said, oh my gosh. And from that small little example, she became one of my mentors. She became one of the easiest persons to, and it was through talking to her and approach and being an approachable way that she was able to see that different cultural bias and learn. And when she would go places, she would pay attention. And I thought just something so simple for that is in being able to bring those cultural biases, because there are things that I wasn't aware of too. So not everyone thinks or raised the same. So I think those being diverse in those roles and and being able to bring that to light helps as well.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. You mentioned the word mentorship, and when we had our pre-planning meeting for this panel, that was probably the word that got us all excited, and all of us had a lot to say about mentorship. And thankfully, Recovery Innovations this year will be embarking on implementing a mentorship program, which I'm really excited about. I too believe in it. It was the thing that really propelled me forward in my career. So let me segue into our next couple of questions, which are, I'm going to save this specific mentorship one for just a moment and ask, what can be done to pave the way for other women? What strategies or initiatives do you believe are crucial in providing support and mentorship for aspiring female leaders? Representative Orwall, I'd love to hear from you on this one.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So I've had the honor of serving for 14 years, and I remember how excited I was when I got elected. I had knocked on 10,000 doors, and I was in Olympia, walked up the marble steps. I was going to my first reception, and I was just so excited. And the reception was for veterans, and my dad was a World War II veteran. It's super important priority. And I remember walking in the room, and I was greeted, and they looked at me and they said, "And what office do you represent?" And I just remember going, "My office," and I'm so excited to be here, and it was only 30% women, and there were very few members of color. And you look around the room and there weren't many women. And so I really felt that an important part of my job is to reach out to other women to really encourage them to run for the legislature. And if you think about, they always say, how many times does a man need to be asked before they run? And it's 0. And for women, it's 4 times. So, again, it's just like recognizing all these talented women around you, and really, how do you encourage? And there's several that I've had the opportunity to work with who I now serve with, and I was the first one to ask them to run. And again, I think, part of it is really making sure that, the legislature and all leadership really reflects the community. And I think that's its strength.
Excellent. Anybody else, excuse me, want to jump in on that? What can be done to pave the way for other women? Specific strategies or initiatives you think are crucial for supporting women in leadership roles?
I would just add the word intentionality, being specifically intentional about inviting women into other spaces to which they might not have access. Sometimes we find ourselves in rooms where we say, oh my gosh, how did I get here? Well, often we got there because somebody thought to bring us. And so bringing someone else along and giving them those opportunities, the exposure, the chance to meet people, to make connections. Once we have the ability to do that is very important.
Absolutely. We all can see those hidden gems. As Representative Orwall just said, I mean, they're out there. These women are out there, and we have to, they often get overlooked, and it's us that needs to identify them and bring them forward, bring them with. Love that from both of you.
Joanne, I also think we need to be intentional about putting ourselves in front of young women and young girls, and show them, when you say you could be anything you want when you grow up, here's an example of what anything is. It's all of these things. So I like what Helen said about being intentional, and then also taking some extra time to put ourselves in front of young women and girls who are at the very beginning of deciding what they want to be when they grow up.
I'm just going to add
point.
one little nugget to what Charlotte said, how she learned how to speak men. We need to teach men how to speak women, right? We need to show them what our leadership looks like and why that's a respectable approach, right? And it has to be balanced, right? How we listen first, assess the situation, bring people along and together to get things done.
Fantastic. Love that, Erika.
One of the things that I also, when we're putting ourselves in being intentional, I think we also need to be approachable, because it helps in so many ways. Because when you're approachable, it allows you to see and hear people, and people to be able to come to you sometimes and ask you questions, and listening to provide support. And it draws, hearing what people, hearing everyone to draw something from you differently. And then last not about least, but I think one of the things that we can teach other women, or to pave the way, is that we tell them, if they can, to learn from the bottom up. And that way it'll give you the entire picture. And if you learn that strategy, or I was fortunate to learn from the bottom up, it allowed me to see how everything worked from the beginning to where we are now. And I think that when we're approachable to different women, I found that I've mentored people that came to me because of a presentation that I've done, and they've seen that I was approachable. So there may be times where I not see you, but you see me. And if I give that energy that I'm approachable, then it can lead to something else as well.
Great. The word mentor came up again. I'm going to grab that and move on to our next question. I would love to hear from nearly all of you on this one. If you'd like to jump in and share, can you tell us about a mentor you had, or a role model that supported your growth, that even might have changed the trajectory of your career? What was your experience with mentorship that got you where you are today? Let's start with Helen.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, everyone should have mentors. And notice I'm saying mentors, not just a mentor, because we need them for diverse purposes in helping to propel our careers. One in particular that stands out to me, and he actually just died 2 years ago, almost at the age of 100. So I had him for a lot of years. He was like a second dad. We're all going to have failures in our jobs. As we move up that leadership ladder, we're going to have an experience. And that's really where the learning occurs, to be quite honest. How we come around that how we recover from that. So I had a major failure in work, and I went home and I turned down the lights and I closed the doors and just felt so much of the pain of failure. And he let me do that for 2 days, and he called on the third day. It was like he knew what I was doing. He called on the third day and he said, okay, now, you tired of that pity party yet? You've earned your stripes. Now you really can get out there and lead, because you've had an experience that's going to make you even more effective in that role. I didn't see it that way. In fact, I got mad at first. I thought, well, you're not giving me the kind of support I feel like I need. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He made me get back out there. And wow, that experience, that testimony has made such a difference for me over time. We don't have time to waste on pity parties. We have to continue to demonstrate to those who are watching us, and we always have younger women, other people watching us, what it means to create success after failure. And that's one of the lessons that I took from that. There are a lot of hidden rules in organizations and those kinds of things that he's taught me over time, but that one in particular, that experience was very powerful for me.
Yeah, that is powerful. And you're right. Everybody's watching. In particular, other women are watching as well, how you handle it when you get something wrong, when you make a mistake, or when there's a bigger failure that really needs to be addressed, and picking yourself back up and moving forward sometimes can give you a second wind. How about Representative Orwall?
Yeah, no, I love this topic, as you know. And, mentors, life coaches, I think we all need them. And one of the things I've learned, I always have a social work intern from the University of Washington, go Huskies. And I feel like I get as much out of that partnership or relationship as they do. I mean, we say mentors, but it really, they bring just these incredible perspectives, energy, talents. And so it really is a partnership of surrounding yourself with people who want to learn, who want to grow. And so it's been a gift for me, but it's, and I've had some just extraordinary bosses. I had this boss, David, and he recently retired, and he was so good at helping me be comfortable walking into a room full of people and really get a real dialogue of change going, which is not easy. And it was in government. Anyone in government, it's hard work. And I think they always say change is easy if it's not for the people. But, I think what he would walk in the room and he would say, what if? And he would get everyone thinking creatively. And I always thought, what a gift he gave me to be able to go into a room and feel comfortable, regardless of who's at the table, to open a dialogue and challenge people to think out of the box. So again, so many gifts with the people we work with.
I think it's interesting that both Helen and Representative Orwall, both of your mentors were men. So you men in the audience, I hope you're listening and can bring someone along with you. Anybody else on our panel want to share a specific experience, your mentor or mentors, as Helen said?
I kind of want to just say one thing. When I accepted this role as executive director, I had a board member named Christine Nichols, who just recently passed this past February. And she pulled me to the side and she said, I'm going to take you to every meeting with me that I think may be important to you. And I just want you to sit and listen, and we can dissect afterwards. And Helen mentioned that. And when she was talking about that in a couple of questions ago, I immediately thought about this. And it was through those experiences that I had with her that made such an impact on my current career. And it also taught me so many valuable lessons that I feel I may not have received otherwise. And if I did, it would have been way much later on. So she saw something in me that I didn't even know that I had. And by her taking me around with her and just explaining, as I learned so much in that short period of time, and it allowed my creative juices to flow. It allowed me to understand the inner workings of not just what I was doing, but just how government and politics work, because I came from the private sector. So I would enter into something that I had no clue about beforehand. And just allowing her to just sit and talk to me and explain and allow me to ask so many questions on the front end that was one of the most impactful people that I've known, and I'm glad that I got a chance to know her before she passed.
Great, thank you for sharing that. Jamie or Erika, anything you would like to add? Your own mentor or mentors?
I have to say this because I'm on this call. I don't want to miss this opportunity. Look, I've had a lot of mentors in my life, and I continue to get them, right? I'm open, right? I always am looking for a mentor. And one of my most recent mentors is on this call, and that's Helen Jones-Kelley. When I started this, my current role as CEO of the Alcohol, Drug, and Mental Health Board of Franklin County, I immediately went to Helen and said, can you help me, please? Will you show me the ropes? Will you help keep me safe? Make sure I don't go off the deep end. And Helen is outstanding. Even just listening to her now just underscores how impactful her role as leader in her county and across our state of Ohio has helped me develop into the kind of leader I'm striving to become. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Helen for all she's done for me. And if I'm out of line, she'll text me and tell me to get back in line. So I appreciate
you need that too in your
I know.
mentor, right? You've got to have your mentor that's going to say, hey, you're going,
That's
you
right.
took a left turn here, get back on track. What a gift to be able to trust somebody to do that for you. So thank you for sharing that. We have 5 minutes left. I could talk with you all day long. But I do want to get to one final question. And I'd love to hear from every single one of you on the panel as our way to wrap up this morning. What is the best advice that you have ever received? Who would like to kick us off?
This is Jamie. So again, in my current role, and as we all talked about, when we are in a room and there are predominantly men in the room, it is hard to get the courage to speak up. So I did have a very nice a mentor that I've worked with in county government. She's retired, but I still stay connected to her. And the best advice as we were walking into a meeting was speak up. What you have to say is valuable. They need to hear it, even if they need to hear it more than once. So I think that just the building your confidence and not doubting yourself, speak up, and people need to hear what you have to say was good advice that I received. Excellent.
I'll jump in here because I'm going to bring this to an RI example. Well, it's helped me with my relationship with RI. I had a mentor. This was a male mentor, and it was about fundraising. So if some of you may know, we are building a new crisis receiving center in Franklin County in Columbus, Ohio. We call it our Franklin County Crisis Care Center. And when I joined my current board, it was touted as a $50 million project. With the pandemic and everything we wanted to accomplish in the design and construction of the building, it went to a $59.9 million project. When I joined, we had $18 million, 10 of which was a loan, 10 million of which was a loan, and I had a big hill to climb. And I learned from this mentor, the best advice that I could have been given in the fundraising space was, he came to me and I said, look, I don't know how to raise money. The most I've ever raised was like $3 million. He said, Erika, fundraising is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger you get. And if that advice was so critical, he was so straight and direct and plain spoken. And that's what I did on this crisis center project. And just last week, we closed the gap and we raised $60.3 million for your crisis care facility that you all will run and leave a legacy of caring and moving people.
Thank you. Oh, that's amazing.
So I know we just have a couple of minutes, but I want to add just two really quick things. One is no self-deprecating conversation. You know, so often when we go into rooms and we immediately say, well, you know, I'm just here to take in information. I'm new in my position. I don't know a lot. Right off the bat, stop that. because you're at a table and you have that same level of power that anyone else at that table has, and let them know that you were there. The other one is my bleachers rule. Ladies and gentlemen, the bleachers rule is just as if you were sitting at a football game, high school football game with your kids or other people, say nothing negative about others in that group. Nothing negative about the kid on the field who really can't play well. Nothing negative. You don't know who is connected to whom. Our relationships and connections are probably the most important part of our ability to continue to move in a promotion or progressive status. And those kinds of things can kill a career. So I always tell my new staff, we have a bleachers rule. You don't know the connections. Don't do that thing that can kill a career in a day because you just speak out of turn. What you say at your kitchen table, that's fine. But what you say in other public venues doesn't work because it can really affect what happens at work.
That's a great point. And those relationships and connections are what really support us all and move us forward. In our final couple of minutes, let's hear best advice from Charlotte, and then we'll wrap up with Representative Orwall.
Going back to my mentor, Christine, one of the things she's ask questions for clarity. You know, never leave a room where you think you understand, but you don't understand. So it's okay to ask questions because that's how we learn. And that's how we build up on the next level. So, and then she also told me something different. She said, sometimes just listen. Just listen. You don't have to make a comment every single time, but it's okay to just listen. And then when you need to speak, speak. And when you're confused, you ask questions. And that's how you figure out and that's how you learn. So knowing when to speak, listening, and then asking questions helps.
Thank you. Representative Orwall, bring us home here. Finish up our panel.
Well, when I heard this question, it took me back again to my 20s when I was a research peon at the University of Washington on the psychiatric unit. And I did research and I had to interview people on the unit with a diagnostic interview schedule, which if you've ever done it, it's very regimented questions about diagnosis. It's not a fun way to interview people. And so I interviewed this woman named Zoe. She was in her 70s. And I just was like, I want her to be comfortable. This is kind of an awkward interview. And we got through it. And at the end, she reached out and touched my hand. And she said, can I give you a piece of advice? She smiled at me and she goes, never stop being a kind human being. And I always think about, it doesn't matter what you say to someone, it is how you make them feel, and helping people feel safe and welcome is so important.
What a wonderful way to end. Never stop being a kind human being. And your best advice can come from anywhere, even the person that you are working with. Thank you all. I just want to say, as I said, I could talk with you all day long. I so appreciate your time this morning and sharing your insights and your wisdom and your incredible inspiration with all of us at Recovery Innovations. Thanks so much.